we're out on the range today, so please bear with gunfire and whatever other noise you hear in the background. Now today we're talking about a particular type of concealed carry handgun, the North American Arms Mini Revolver. There's a bunch of different varieties of it on the market these days, but I have two, the .22 Magnum and the .22 Long Rifle. Now before we go any farther, let me show you a close-up of what these two guns look like. And this is the .22 Long Rifle on your left and the .22 Magnum on your right. I put these bills behind them just to give them perspective. The advantage of tiny guns like this is obvious, but recently some people have asked me about their true viability as concealed carry handguns, the two big concerns being power and accuracy. Well, on previous occasions I've shot them through the chronograph and things like that. I'm not going to repeat that here today, but let's see what we can do to shed some light on their power and accuracy. So behind me I've got two silhouettes with shoot and sees on them. I'll shoot the target on your left with the .22 Long Rifle and the target on your right with the .22 Magnum from 7 yards and see what kind of accuracy we can get out of these. So how'd we do? Well, I fired 5 shots, 4 on the shoot and see, and I've got 1 down here. Now normally this is the part where I'd say that this one was a flyer and it was just me. In this case it wasn't. If you look closely at this bullet hole, you'll see that bullet was tumbling. And that happens occasionally with these mini revolvers. And I've found that no matter what type or brand of ammunition I use, I still experience that occasionally. But still, 4 out of 5 in the shoot and see. Now with the Magnum, you see we got a good group, but it's a little lower than I wanted it to be. Most versions of these mini revolvers have a front sight, but no real rear sight, and it can be very difficult to figure out where you want that front sight to be. And so shooting these things accurately can be very difficult. But as you see, if you put some practice into it, and this is 7 yards, their accuracy seems to be acceptable. One other thing, you'll notice that when I shoot silhouettes like this, I usually put the shoot and see in the middle, and in this case I didn't. When you're shooting calibers with this low power, and that power reduced even more by this very short barrel, shot placement becomes paramount, and you've got to shoot at the right part of the target. But what about the power of these mini revolvers? As I said before, I've chronographed them in other presentations. I'm not going to redo that today. But with the 1 1/8 inch barrel, obviously it costs you a lot of velocity. And where that really matters is that it puts you below expansion threshold for hollow points. Now for .22 Magnum, there are some ammunitions you can get that are formulated for short barrels. The problem with those is I have never seen it in the store. It is extremely hard to find. Now for .22 Long Rifle, there really isn't any kind of ammo like that that I've ever found. And in shooting .22 hollow points through really short barrel handguns, down around the 2.5 inch barrel length, they are below expansion threshold for pretty much every hollow point I've ever tried. With the 1 1/8 inch barrel, even worse. Now there's one exception to that, and that has been Remington Yellow Jacket ammunition. That's a 33 grain truncated cone hollow point. That has expanded really well out of guns like the Beretta 21A autoloader. But I've never tried it with the 1 1/8 inch barrel that the mini revolver has. So let's go back about 5 yards, shoot these jugs of water, and see what, if any, expansion we get. Okay, our jug fell over after 1 shot. Now I've got it reset up. Let's try a couple more shots. And there you have it. Bullet expansion is basically none. And that water makes an almost perfect medium for bullet expansion. If they didn't expand there, chances are you're not going to get expansion in anything else. With any concealed carry handgun, things like magazine capacity and the ability to reload quickly are very real concerns. Let me show you the loading and unloading process of this particular revolver. And again, there are some that work a little differently, but most of them will work like this. You put it on half cock, press a detent pin and pull out your cylinder retention pin. then the cylinder comes completely out and you just load the rounds. It holds 5. There are some earlier generations where the 22 Magnum version only holds 4, but most of the time they hold 5. Once you get it loaded, you put the cylinder back into the revolver. It'll only fit one way. Put your retention pin back in. You can see the concern of my hand is sometimes around the muzzle of a loaded gun. Now that's the loading process. The real trick is the reloading process. You can shake out a couple, but you have to use the cylinder retention pin as an ejector rod. And then you load your ammunition again, one round at a time. As shocking as it may seem, I've never found speed loaders for this particular revolver. And remember that you have to remember to put it on half cock to effectively reload it. Now, that might be a fairly impressive 2-yard group, but you can see that the reloading process of this gun is very slow. So whatever trouble you might get into that you need to get out of with this gun, you're pretty much going to have to solve it with the 5 rounds that are in it. So what's the bottom line of these guns? Well, accuracy, better than a lot of people think. Power, marginal. But if you're 2 yards away and you're getting hits like these and you're shooting at the right part of the target, I'm going to say the power will most likely be acceptable. But the real thing of these guns is that they allow you to have a gun that you otherwise might not have. Now, this is the way I dress pretty much every day. Believe it or not, I even own t-shirts that aren't green. And this creates some real problems in firearms concealment. And the North American Arms Mini Revolver is the gun that I will have when I otherwise might not have. Now let me tell you a short anecdote. My dad carried the North American Arms Mini Revolver for decades. And he dressed pretty much the same way I do, except he always wore blue jeans. And he carried that gun for so long that every pair of jeans he had was faded in such a way that you could see the outline of the gun on his pocket. But the big thing was, it allowed him to have a gun that he otherwise might not have. And so depending on how you dress and what your daily life consists of, the North American Arms might be the right gun for some people. And there's no question that having 5 rounds in my pocket right now certainly beats the 15 rounds of 40 Smith & Wesson in your Glock that you left at home. So, as always, don't try this at home. I'm what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the North American Arms Mini Revolver video.